Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Spears. Apologies that this is the second extra video today. This is Ukraine War Update Extra, giving you the extra tidbits and nuggets to get your teeth into to give you a greater understanding of the war in Ukraine. And I did a shorter extra than I usually do earlier, just to finish off this argument with a Russian troll who was making accusations on my threads. And I wanted to also talk to you about how to use firms, data, and also how to employ things like the argument from silence. Anyway, that was all as also a preamble to this. And I knew I was going to do at some point this extra talking about Russian bots and Russian trolls. And in fact, I'm going to take the whole extra up talking about this because it's a really big topic. And actually, that bunch of videos I just did concerning this ongoing argument with a Russian troll is really good groundwork to understand, as much of what is going on, certainly to give you a really good introduction to this video. Okay. Where should we start? Hopefully, I've made a coherent thread of tabs here. I hope this kind of makes sense and I've got things in the right order. So we're going to start with just an introduction into the geopolitical stage, landscape, if you like. This is a paper in Nature, Nature Human Behavior. And the paper is from June last year, Russian Disinformation Finds Fertile Ground in the West, written by Ilya Yablokov. And I'm going to just jump in a little bit further down. It talks about a turning of the tide after Yeltsin, after Putin took over, and Putin didn't look like he was going to be the sort of leader he ended up being, but then ended up being that leader. So to join the paper, what we now understand as a turn of the tide with amplified reinvestment in old Soviet strategy took place in the mid-2000s, in a way as a reaction to US advancement in post-Soviet countries. US President George Bush Jr., his first administration, 2001 to 5, called for the promotion of democracy around the world, including in former Soviet states, and this call had a profound effect on Putin's office. It represented an existential threat to Putin's rule, to which he publicly responded in his famous 2007 speech at the Munich Security Conference. He expressed a view that a unipolar world led by the USA was turning the planet into a dictatorship of one country, and that Russia should stand against it and take the risk of challenging the global US hegemony. I've talked about this before, so this is back to me. And I've talked about this being the rationale for BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and challenging that US hegemony to provide an alternative, both in terms of global trade and an alternative currency, perhaps, but also just like if it's going to be a multipolar world, then the polarity of BRICS should be the central hegemony. And this is really important. Like understanding that is really important to understanding the intentions and desires of Putin and the Kremlin. So to continue, just the next year, the Kremlin had the chance to experience the power of this purported hegemony. Hegemony means supreme power. During and after the 5-day war between Georgia and Russia in August 2008, images of the Russian army invading the independent post-Soviet republic resurrected the ghosts of the Cold War in the West and triggered the conservative and anti-Western turn in the Kremlin's politics. These two events arguably became a watershed moment: the public stand against the US promotion of democracy in Moscow's backyard, and the global humiliation when Moscow tried to show its teeth and move its forces into its former colony. However, Moscow's establishment realized that fighting with mainstream opinion about Russia in the West was pointless. Instead, to counter US hegemonic narratives, the Kremlin took to systematically presenting alternative narratives and dissenting voices. Russia's public diplomacy tool, the international television channel Russia Today, was rebranded as RT in 2009, probably to hide its clear links to the Russian government. And indeed, this is back to me, RT became quite popular. It was seen as an alternative news source. You had a bunch of UK, for example, and this would have happened with Americans, I'm sure, as well, and a bunch of established UK news anchors going across to RT, some political figures going across to RT. Yeah, Alex Salmond from the SNP, I think, had a program on there, the Scottish National Party, sorry, and other people appearing on there. So this was part of the tactics of the Kremlin here. So after an aggressive campaign to expand in English, Spanish, German, and French-speaking countries throughout the 2010s, the channel became the most visible source of Russia's disinformation campaigns abroad. Analysis of its broadcast shows the adoption of KGB approaches, as well as the use of novel tools provided by the global online environment. Okay, I'm just going to switch to a question that was asked of me today. And the question is from one of my members, and thanks so much for that. Jiri Hrubek, thank you very much again for the great content. I would like to share an idea I got recently. Disinformation from Russia is simply working only because of missing article in laws of democratic states. I mean, if there were a real war between US and Russia, all those pro-Russian voices would be penalized adequately, right? But there is no war, luckily, of course. But I think we are missing options like declaring defensive informational war against external non-friendly powers, some sort of law article, and that to be under strict rules and temporarily only to limit the possibility of abuse. I know there's some sort of danger against the principles of democracy. I really do understand that, but is not democracy threatened now anyway? What do you think? I really value your opinion. Well, thank you. And I said there will be elements of this that governments might entertain, but when they also entertain freedom of speech, there is a tension. So the idea is like, so what he's asking is, shouldn't we be able to shut down the overt disinformation? What about these bots, these trolls? And we're going to go on to talk about that. And these sources spewing this pro-Russian narrative that gives disinformation a place and gives it purchase in the minds of people in the West. And this then causes actual tangible harm. It causes harm in the political systems. It causes harm as people's public opinion or people's opinions distort their conclusions and their voting habits, for example. And so actually this is thoroughly problematic. But then on the one hand, you get a lot of people who are like, no, this is about freedom of speech. We should just be able to throw back. They should be able to say what they like on places like Twitter, and we should just have to come back at that with our own arguments, so on and so forth. But the problem is when you then have, say, look at Twitter, for example, you can buy yourself a blue tick, which gets your voice amplified. It's not just freedom of speech, actually. And when you have code in Twitter that disadvantages Ukrainian news, and therefore, stuff like Russian propaganda isn't disadvantaged, then you are getting, and you can pay for that amplification, as I say, you are getting the ability to throw your voice out even further. So it's actually not quite freedom of speech. There is, some people are more free than others if you pay for it. And therein lies a problem. And the question is, well, should we legislate, should we regulate against the ability for people to freely disinform? And I would say yes, but it's really, really fine line as to what becomes censorship, and actually can you justify censorship if it's causing tangible harm, to like literally costing people their lives in Ukraine? If governments are making decisions on the back of a bunch of disinformation, and those decisions are causing a lack of support for Ukraine and more support for Russia, and that translates into people dying, then actually you have a pretty good rationale for shutting down overt disinformation. So that then goes back to, we'll rejoin this article with that in mind. So to begin with, the US output of RT tapped into the rich American culture of conspiracy theories by running a story entitled 911 Questions to the US Government About 9/11. The piece exploited one of the most fertile grounds for conspiracy theories among US individuals in the 21st century, the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center on 11th of September 2001. The op-ed raised questions such as, who stood behind the terrorist attacks of 9/11? How did the Bush administration benefit from the suffering of ordinary Americans? And did the US intelligence know about the terrorist attacks? And if it did, why was nothing done to prevent it? The style is one that is now widely recognized as a tool of sowing doubt. The author just asks reasonable questions without making any evidence-based conclusions. Right, in internet parlance, this is called jacking off, where jack is spelt J-A-Q. It's called just asking questions. Jacking off is a very powerful tool. Someone like, say what you like about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was super famous for this sounds weird, for jacking off on Fox News all the time. So he would, I'm just asking a question. What's wrong with me just asking this? But it was often a really controversial question that was a leading question that he would then provide a very slanted answer to. And this kind of style of just asking questions is a way of moving what's called the Overton window. What the Overton window is, what's acceptable to talk about. And if you just start asking questions about this thing on the side of the Overton window, then it moves the window just to the extremes and to the extremes, and suddenly everyone's talking about stuff that 30 years ago would have been off limits to talk about. And jacking off is just a way of being able to do that. Anyway, let's get back to the piece here. Who is the audience of the story, and who could potentially be targeted by such content? As Bratich argued, 9/11 represents a prototypical case of national dissensus among American individuals and an apparently legitimate case for raising concerns about the transparency of the US authorities. It is indicative that whoever designed the launch of RT-US knew how polarizing it would be to ask questions about the most painful part of the recent past. No matter whether they held right-wing or left-wing opinions, anyone could find reasonable arguments to criticize the US government or the mainstream corporate media for the way in which the 9/11 terrorist attacks were covered for and for the questions asked of government in their aftermath. Question more, a universal mantra of contemporary conspiracy theorists, was adopted as a slogan by RT, and the channel presented itself as an underdog truth seller that takes on the elites of the Western world. Really important point how Russia, you might have thought Russia were left wing in its communist days, the Soviet Union, left wing, and some will argue they're now kind of nationalistic, fascistic, right wing. But when it comes to sowing discord, they will get into bed with doesn't matter who around the world. Like the radical left or the radical right, they will support to foment their desire. Their intention is to foment discord and to unsettle the hegemony around the world. So whether that's by supporting the left wing in that country or the right wing in that country, it doesn't really matter. You support whoever's going to cause the most trouble, whether fascist or radical leftists, whatever. In this regard, conspiracy theories came to be a convenient tool to interrogate the uneven spread of power in the Western countries, especially in the aftermath of the global financial crisis in 2008, when millions of people were suffering from inadequate state support. It goes on, talks about Sergei Skripal in the UK and whatnot. So I'm going to rejoin it later. Yet what has helped Russian disinformation to spread is social polarization, which became an even bigger problem after 2008, when the Kremlin relaunched its global disinformation conquest. In the 2016 US presidential elections, and in addition to hacker attacks, Russian troll farms used divisive topics such as gun control and racial conflict to polarize voters and plant disinformation. Scholars have observed similar approaches during the Ukrainian war. Russian troll farms evidently use bots to target populations of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa countries, who could be more amenable to Kremlin messaging regarding the war in Ukraine. These bots do anything to avoid association with the Kremlin. They post in local languages, tap into local political agendas, and spread anti-US or anti-UK memes, which are shared by many in the BRICS countries. Once in a while, they post and share messages related to the Russia-Ukraine war that should spread perspectives that are favorable to Moscow narratives. And there's an argument as to whether he means trolls as opposed to bots, and we're going to discuss that in a second. So just to end this article, the operations of RT were shut down in most European countries and in the USA in February and March 2022. This goes back to the question, what should we do? And there are things that the countries are doing, like shutting down RT as a news station for cable providers in these countries, right? You can't have RT, and I think that's a good thing. I am not against that, because this is information war. In the same way that you would battle human beings on the front line in Ukraine, it's like, we don't like what you're doing. You're attacking us physically here, so we are going to rebut that attack physically here. If you're being attacked in the information landscape, in an information war, this is just fifth generation warfare. And you don't just sit back and go, well, they've got the freedom to do that. In the same way, you wouldn't say, well, you've got the freedom to invade our country. You got the freedom to shoot us. No, you don't have the freedom to shoot us because that is harmful. So we will stop that and we will retaliate. No, you don't have the freedom to disinform us. That is harmful. We have the right to rebut that. So how do you rebut disinformation? Well, the one answer is to shut it down. So RT don't have the freedom to spread disinformation around countries where there is fertile ground for that. And I think that is a good use of regulation. Okay. This active deplatforming of Russian disinformation might have positive outcomes. Tougher legislation could be an instrument to prevent the spread of disinformation. At the same time, educating online users about the basics of online literacy can help to avoid disinformation traveling further than a user's phone. Of course, that's a long term thing. I mean, it's easy to say that, but actually, how do you go about educating everyone in online literacy and avoiding disinformation? Now, in Finland, they're doing a good job of that educationally as part of their education system, but that's no easy fix. Finally, disinformation is inescapable if society suffers from inequalities. Distrust will be an eternal driver of anti-democratic movements. To avoid this, political elites should not trade democracy's core values for short-term political or financial gain. Propaganda works when there is a fact that can be twisted in a way that is favorable for the propagandist. Therefore, political polarization and growing social inequality create incredibly fruitful soil for Russian disinformation. Yep, don't disagree, but that's no easy fix again. To solve these problems should be the primary goal of the Western establishment. If this is ever achieved, there would be no room for Russian disinformation. That's a pipe dream. You're never going to have a situation where there's no inequality and where propaganda can't find at least some fertile ground somewhere. It's just not going to happen. But it's kind of right. Okay, so that's your basis there. Now we're going to look at bots compared to trolls. So what are bots and what's the difference? What do they do? What's the difference between them and trolls? So the demand for online traffic has spawned an entire industry for bot traffic. And the best way to generate bot traffic in bulk is to use a bot farm. So bots are a system of scripts or software designed to click automatically. They are programmed to generate IP addresses and web sessions and interact with various online features. A bot farm is a collective of these bots, which may or may not be in the same physical location. Often a bot farm will consist of a large bank of smartphones or tablets connected by a controlling device. They will then carry out repetitive tasks, usually engaging with social media, viewing videos, or simply visiting websites to boost traffic. So sometimes when you look at, like, I look at certain YouTube channels and think, how have you got that many views? May look at, it might be Scott Ritter or Colonel McGregor, and yes, there is a huge demand for that in certain areas of the world, but also there is famously the ability to pay for clicks. So you pay a bot farm, you say, I want this video to be to have double the views, and then it works like a snowball, because the more people that view it, the more it gets on the algorithm, the more it spreads, right? And then the more people that view it. So you can pay for that boost, I guess, to get your views up there, whether it be Telegram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, whatever the platform, you can use bot farms to do that. So over the years, bot farms have become more advanced so that they're not just simple scripts. Instead, they have evolved intelligence, scale, and cunning, and now have dedicated infrastructure with servers, multiple computers, and routers. The result, they're more effective at generating fake clicks and harder to differentiate from real human users. And then there have been bot farm crackdowns. In March 2022, the Ukrainian government destroyed 5 bot farms being used to spread misinformation and inspire panic among the citizens during the Russian invasion. During the raid, at least 10,000 online accounts, 100 GSM gateway devices, and close to 10,000 SIM cards were discovered. The bust gives some insight into how extensive the network of bot farms can be. They can run multiple accounts at any time, generating mind-boggling traffic. And indeed, if we refer to some of the news pieces on this, Ukraine dismantles more bot farms spreading Russian disinformation. The Cyber Department of Ukrainian Security Service, SSU, dismantled 2 more bot farms that spreads Russian disinformation on social networks and messaging platforms via thousands of fake accounts. As the SSU discovered, this bot army of almost 7,000 accounts was used to push content discrediting the defense forces of Ukraine, justify Russia's armed aggression, and destabilize Ukraine's social and political situation. So you might have tweets or blogs, pieces, articles, YouTube videos, whatever that are the actual content. The bots aren't necessarily creating that content, but what you do is you get bots to like that content and share that content automatically, and then that then gets that thrown out to more people out there, and that disinformation is able to be amplified and then grow. So The first one, operated by a 24-year-old native living in the Kyiv region, was used by representatives of the PR departments of political parties and Russian citizens promoting destructive and provocative material in Ukrainian information space. To hide his identity, he used forged Ukrainian documents, Russian email services, and virtual phone numbers of Russian and Belarusian mobile operators for verification. The organizer rented out or sold ready-made bots to interested parties, accepting payment to a bank card, the SSU said. The second bot farm from Odessa spread panic in the region by pushing disinformation and fake news from the front, selling its services to Russian clients, so on and so forth. And then, again, later, this is this year. The previous one was 2022. A pro-Russian bot farm consisting of over 2,000 bots that discredited the defense forces of Ukraine and the military and political leadership of Ukraine spread disinformation about the situation on the contact line and called upon Ukrainians to avoid the military draft. So all this kind of narrative that's being thrown out there is then getting boosted by these bots. The main clients of the bot farm were members of the Russian secret services. They bought fake accounts and used them on popular social media platforms, pretending to be ordinary Ukrainians. The SSU reports that the detainee set up a hardware software complex for raising bots in his own apartment with the help of special equipment. He was able to create hundreds of anonymous accounts every day. He received payments for renting fake accounts through Russian electronic payment systems. The aggressor was conducting information sabotage in order to destabilize the internal political situation in the western oblasts of Ukraine. So again, what do you just allow this? This is freedom of speech, right? But it's actually automated throwing out of not real humans. Does that fall under freedom of speech? Should you be able to regulate against that? I would argue very strongly yes. Right, but those are bots. Let's move on to trolls. And trolls are a different beast entirely, so to speak. What's a troll factory? This is a NATO document. In internet communication, a troll is defined as a person who provokes disputes by raising controversial topics or attacking other participants. However, a troll factory is an entity conducting disinformation propaganda activities on the internet. This activity is often concealed under an inconspicuous name, e.g. Public Relations Agency or Internet Research Centre. We'll come on to this. Operations of troll factories are usually focused on the political or economic sphere. The aim of the operations may be attacking political opponents, unfairly attacking a competing company, or other action indicated by the ordering party. Troll factories achieve their goals using, among other things, fake news and hate speech. So now we're moving into the area of human beings, not setting up a factory of autonomous kind of scripts or whatever, or mobile phones with different accounts and then sending them all off to go and like videos and do what. We've got human beings spreading disinformation in a very human way. So these are also known as Russian web brigades. Okay, Russian web brigades are state-sponsored anonymous internet political commentators and trolls linked to the government of Russia. Participants report that they are organized into teams and groups of commentators and participate in Russian and international political blogs and internet forums using sock puppets, those are like fake account names, social bots, and large-scale orchestrated trolling and disinformation campaigns to promote pro-Putin and pro-Russian propaganda. Articles on the Russian Wikipedia concerning the MH17 crash, MH17 crash, and the Russo-Ukrainian war were targeted by Russian internet propaganda outlets. In June 2019, a group of 12 editors, including coordinated pro-government and anti-opposition bias, was blocked on the Russian language of Wikipedia. During the war by Russia against Ukraine in 2022, Kremlin trolls were still active on many social platforms and were spreading disinformation related to the war events. Yeah. Kremlin trolls are closely tied to the Internet Research Agency. So that's what the NATO document was kind of say. They have names like the Internet Research Center. Well, actually, the real one is the Internet Research Agency, a St. Petersburg-based company run by Prigozhin, who is a close ally to Putin and head of the PMC, Wagner PMC, known for committing war crimes. Right. It says later, further investigations were performed by Russian opposition newspaper Novaya Gazeta and Institute of Modern Russia in 2014-15, inspired by the peak of activity of the pro-Russian brigades during the Russo-Ukrainian war and assassination of Boris Nemtsov, who was going to be running for Russian president, and he was assassinated. The effort of using troll armies to promote Putin's policies is reported to be a multi-million-dollar operation. According to an investigation by the British Guardian newspaper, the flood of pro-Russian comments is part of a coordinated informational psychological war operation. One Twitter bot network was documented to use more than 20,500 fake Twitter accounts to spam negative comments after the death of Boris Nemtsov and events related to the Ukraine conflict. And showing the reach of Russian trolls, during his presidency, Donald Trump retweeted a tweet by a fake account operated by Russians. In 2017, he was among almost 40 celebrities and politicians, along with over 3,000 global news outlets, identified to have inadvertently shared content from Russian troll farm accounts. So the idea is that you get these out to certain people who might pick them up, who have massive followings, and then suddenly that bit of disinformation is spread to millions of people who are much more likely to believe that because the person who is spreading that is someone that they hold in high value. Okay. And that is the gold mine that troll farms are looking for. I'd imagine that the employee who had done that tweet, who had been retweeted by Donald Trump in 2017, would have got a massive bonus. That would have been like, you are troll of the month, because that's exactly what they're aiming for. And war in Ukraine 2022, during the Russian war with Ukraine, the trolls allegedly hired by Internet Research Agency, that's Prigozhin's entity, had reportedly extended their foothold into TikTok, spreading misinformation on war events and attempting to question or sow doubt about the Ukraine war. Authentic looking profiles had allegedly hundreds of thousands of followers. IRA, so Internet Research Agency, was reported to be active across different platforms, including Instagram and Telegram. Right. Now we're going to look at a couple of examples of what a bot might look like. And I'm going to ask you whether you think one of my pro-Russian voices is a troll. Sorry. And I would say definitely a troll. So one of the things trolls do is when they first post on a new platform they haven't posted on before, and I've noticed this is something I picked up myself, is they will say who they are and give you an identifier, whether that's an ethnic identifier, a geographical identifier, a political identifier. I vote like this, but I won't do that anymore. Or I'm this kind of person and I believe this. Even if it's got, this is where it becomes most obvious, when it has nothing to do with the video or the tweet or the comment or whatever that they're reacting to. They're just wedging themselves in there and saying, this is me and this is my opinion. And you might identify with one part of that. You might be from the same place as them, or might be the same ethnicity as them, and then they say, and I think this, and then you go, oh, I'm that kind of person, but I don't normally think that. Maybe I should think that. And it sows doubt, and it's about sowing doubt, isn't it? So let's look at this. Here, free thinkers strike again, says Mira of Kiev. Right. So here we have two Russian troll accounts. This first one is called Black in the Empire. I don't get paid by Putin. I never even met him. I'm not a bot. Methinks she does protest too much. I'm not a bot. I'm a Black American that grew up in the projects in NYC, an Air Force vet, and a husband and father of two boys. Right. So he's saying the identifiers here are Black, from a working class background in New York, and an Air Force vet, so a military vet, and a husband and father of two boys, and a family man. Okay, he's ticking all the boxes. Now, if you're only one of them, you start identifying with this person. And he says, I take care of my family and want a better world for everybody. And he sounds like a decent human being. I just stopped being as gullible as you. Oh, so I'm right. So I've just thought that something that Putin said was bad, or that something Biden said was good, or something like that. And now this person's come along and I identify with this person in some way, and he's now calling me out on that. Oh my goodness. But of course, this is just troll activity, because when you look at how this tweet is set out, it's just a copy and paste job. I don't get paid by Putin, says Aurora now. So we've now got a female. I don't get paid by Putin. I never even met him. Same text. I'm not a bot. Same text. I'm a, and then instead of being a Black projects inhabitant from New York, I'm a white Turkish woman that grew up in Turkey and worked all my life. Hard worker, woman, white, Turkish. I tried to survive by myself and I want a better world for everybody. Instead of being a family person and want a better world for everyone, it's someone who's struggling to get by and wants a better world for everyone. Oh, that's brilliant. You sound awesome. I just stopped being as gullible as you. Oh my goodness, what have I done? What have I believed? Maybe I shouldn't believe it. Okay. That's the kind of thing you expect. And it's usually, you've never spoken to this person before. This is the first time they've ever spoken on that platform. And they say something like this. Right, here's one of, and many of you will know this person. And if this person isn't a Russian bot, I'm really sorry if I'm false accusing you. You can come on and do a video and speak to me in person and show me you are who you are, and I will take back everything I say. You can show me bona fide evidence. So this is solid faux life. I'm a black American, and I want everybody who supports neo-Nazi Ukraine to know I support Russia in this situation. I voted for Biden. I will never do that again. What took the cake for me was when Ukraine abused and beat black Africans trying to escape the war zone. Plus, the Azov battalion salutes Hitler and are racist. That's the first comment he ever made on any of my videos. I went back and searched that just recently. I made a mental note. I didn't screenshot it then. I went back and screenshot it just recently in case he ever gets rid of it. Because at the time I was like, well, this guy's a troll. I know that because I already knew stuff like this. These are obviously newer ones, but I knew stuff like that already. And as soon as he said that, I was like, well, you're a Russian troll. And when he then has commented throughout his time commenting on my threads, I've called him out on his language. And I said to him, you are not a black American. You are a Russian troll. And then he started taking on vocabulary that you might associate if you had a really stereotypical view of a black American. The next few comments were really in so-called black American language. And it was like, oh, you're trying a little bit too hard now. Anyway, what do you think? Is this a Russian troll? Yeah, this fits the bill for me. So the Russian trolls are on my threads very often. Everyone knows who they are. Okay, let's go back and look at a couple of articles. So this is a 3-year-old article. So the troll networks have been around a long time. Russian-led troll network based in West Africa uncovered. A newly discovered Russian-led network of professional trolls was being outsourced to Ghanaian and Nigerian operatives, according to Facebook and Twitter, who removed the network's accounts on Thursday. Freedom of speech? Legislate. Get rid of that. False. The network was small, just 49 Facebook accounts, 85 Instagram accounts, and 71 Twitter accounts in question. But it marks the first time that a Russian information operation targeting the US has been found to be run from Africa. Nathaniel Gleicher, Facebook's head of security policy, said the company believes it was such a small network because it was disrupted in the early stages of building its audience. It was, Gleicher said, operated by local nationals, some wittingly and some unwittingly, in Ghana and Nigeria on behalf of individuals in Russia. The people behind this network engaged in a number of deceptive tactics, including the use of fake accounts to manage pages posing as non-governmental organizations or personal blogs and post in groups, Gleicher added. They frequently posted that about new US news and attempted to grow their audience by focusing on topics like black history, black excellence and fashion, celebrity gossip, news and events related to famous Americans like historical figures and celebrities, and LGBTQ issues. They also shared content about oppression and injustice, including police brutality. So again, what they're doing here is finding divisive, polarizing subjects and identifying with them, so that if you identify with any of those things, with that person or that fake person, or you identify with the things that that fake person identifies with, you have this shared experience or shared opinion, then you're much more susceptible to take on board the other things those people say. And when you hear these stories about troll farms, quite often you hear of how they set up blogs. So it might be like literally something like one I was reading about years ago was an embroidery blog or something, and it was 5 out of 6 articles were on embroidery. But then 1 out of 6 articles was on something to do with Russia or some kind of anti-West thing or pro-Russian thing. And it would just slip in a bit. And then it was like embroidery. And like you'd follow that as a genuine thing because you identify with that, you're interested in that topic. And then you're being drip fed, little bits and pieces that build up your picture of geopolitics in the world that would feed into a pro-Russian narrative. Right, this is from a year ago. So that previous one was 3 years ago. This is a year ago. Russian internet trolls based in an old arms factory in St. Petersburg are targeting world leaders online and spreading support for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the British government has said, citing research. Online operatives were found to be ordering followers to target Western media outlets and politicians, according to research funded by the UK government, which plans to share it with major online platforms and other governments. The troll factory is suspected to be linked to Prigozhin, the founder of the internet research agency, accused of meddling in the 2016 election that saw Donald Trump win the presidency. The headquarters is allegedly located in rented space in St. Petersburg Arsenal Machine Building Factory, a company that manufactures military equipment and technology. The research and said TikTok influencers are being paid to amplify pro-Kremlin narratives. Operatives also amplified genuine messages by legitimate social media users that happen to be consistent with the Kremlin's viewpoint, seemingly to evade social media platforms' measures to combat disinformation. The analysis suggests one main activity is brigading. These are the Russian brigades, the web brigades, as I talked about earlier, Russian web brigades, to steer attention of discussion on social media and in comment sections of newspapers towards favoured opinions. Manipulation of polls in Western media was also observed, including to skew the results survey on whether sanctions against Russia were supported. Activities on Twitter and Facebook were detected, but were found to be particularly concentrated on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. A key role in the network is said to be performed by a Telegram channel called Cyberfront Z, with the letter Z signifying Russian support for the war. Researchers say the group seems to have learned from the tactics used by QAnon conspiracy theorists and from the Islamic State terror group. The troll farm is said to recruit and hire salaried workers openly, justifying the work as, quote, patriotic activity in support of the, quote, the special military operation in Ukraine. And in fact, the UK government released this piece, and this is what that was referring to, which has funded expert research unveiling new tactics of the Kremlin's large-scale disinformation campaign. Troll Factory is targeting politicians and baiting audiences across a number of countries, including UK, South Africa, and India. Think BRICS. The operation has suspected links to Prigozhin. Well, since this came out, Prigozhin has admitted it was him, founder of the infamous bot farm, the Internet Research Agency. So the key findings include a new troll farm that is seeking to guide and brigade a wider network of supporters and sympathizers to engage in targeted trolling behaviors. This information operation and its associated targeting trolling activities are being directed at senior international politicians and international media outlets. Traces of the operation have been detected across 8 social media platforms, including Twitter, Telegram, Facebook, and TikTok. Key tactical innovations of the operational methodology include the use of commenting behaviors, use of VPNs, and deliberate amplification of organic content supporting the Kremlin's position. All of these methods help to avoid detection and interception by social media platforms. And their tactics include calling on subscribers to target the social media profiles of opponents and Kremlin critics, including prominent politicians and world leaders, and spam them with pro-Kremlin comments, asking them to turn on VPNs and spam the comment section of specific links to Instagram, YouTube, and Telegram. Focusing activity on posting comments rather than authoring original content, a tactic likely to decrease the risks of being detected by social media platforms, or for engaging in coordinated inauthentic behavior and or harmful content. And lastly, searching for organic content posted by genuine users coherent with the lines they want to push, and then working to amplify these messages in order that such views are distorted as the norm. This means that provided the content they post is not too offensive, they are unlikely to be subject to deplatforming interventions. In other words, take an article written by someone who's genuinely pro-Russian and just throw that out there, comment loads about how great it is, throw all the links out there, flood, TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or Twitter with links to that, or talking about how wonderful it is, and then that amplifies that voice much more than it otherwise would be. So this is kind of been reported ad nauseum, but let's just dip into Euroactive, saying the sick masterminds of the operations known on the encrypted messaging app Telegram as Cyberfront Z are believed to work from a former factory in St. Petersburg. So that's what we just talked about. According to the Russian media outlet Fontanka, the group is offering 45,000 rubles a month, nearly 600 euros, to post 200 comments a day on social networks. So they're paid to comment, and they probably get bonuses when you interact with them, which I have done. I'm victim to that, right? The primary objective is to manipulate international public opinion about the Russian presence in Ukraine and to praise Vladimir Putin. Traces of these operations were found on 8 platforms, as we have discussed. Right. And just finally, Wagner Chief has admitted to founding Russian troll farms sanctioned for meddling in the US elections. And this happened then in February of this year. CNN reports that Prigozhin admitted on Tuesday to founding the Internet Research Agency, a notorious troll farm that the US government has sanctioned for interfering in American elections. I react with pleasure, Prigozhin said in the statement. I've never just been the financier of the Internet Research Agency. I invented it, I created it, I managed it for a long time. It was founded to protect the Russian information space from boorish, aggressive propaganda of anti-Russian narrative from the West. The US Treasury Department sanctioned the IRA in 2018, so this is significant, accusing it of having created and managed a vast number of fake online personas that posed as legitimate US persons to include grassroots organizations, interest groups, and a state political party on social media. Through this activity, the IRA posted thousands of ads that reached millions of people online. The IRA also organized and coordinated political rallies during the run up to the 2016 election, all while hiding its Russian identity. Further, the IRA unlawfully utilized personally identifiable information from US persons to open financial accounts to help fund IRA operations. Prigozhin's comments on Tuesday came several months after he admitted to interfering in the US democratic process and pledged to do so again in what appeared to be the first admission of high-level meddling campaign from someone within close to the Kremlin. And then Prigozhin went on to say, "Gentlemen, we interfered, we interfere, and we will interfere carefully, precisely, surgically, and in our own way as we know how. During our pinpoint operations, we will remove both kidneys and the liver at once." And indeed, Prigozhin hadn't admitted his involvement at the time, but the IRA shot to prominence for its attempts to interfere with the 26th US presidential election, details of which were revealed in a federal indictment against 13 Russian nationals made public in February 2018. So actually, the US government did get onto that. It got onto it, during Trump's rule as presidency, and they kind of had to because it all came out. A lot of it came on the back of the Mueller report, so on and so forth. Now, this just goes to show, if we take it right back to the beginning, I know this has been super long, but go back to, this is what they set out to do, which is like, it's much cheaper to have troll farms operating people to sow discord around the world than to go to war. There's no point spending X billion quid on, or dollars or rubles on, a bunch of tanks if we're really not going to go and fight a war with America, like face to face. It's far more effective to spend that money on screwing up the political landscape by sowing discord online. And we can do that easily and without leading to the death of our soldiers. It's much more effective, much cheaper, and you can sow discord all over the world. Anyway, there you go. A really good, or quite a good series. I found it pretty good on Channel 4 in the UK, called The Undeclared War, but it apparently had a pretty accurate understanding of how coders and Russian trolls work, and that's I found that enjoyable to watch. It was a good series, The Undeclared War. So go and watch that. Gives you a kind of insight into that. Simon Pegg there. Anyway, that was a really long one, and it was a one single kind of subject, but I think it's super important to talk about this, to get it out there, and so that we all understand, what we're up against when we are interacting with these people, and possibly we shouldn't interact them, and possibly I should block them. Let me know what you think. I sometimes enjoy interacting with them because I love a good argument, but it's probably counterproductive in the sense that it gives them purchase on these threads and allows them to spread that disinformation. But the other side of the coin is, well, actually, if we rebut those points and quite clearly seem to be winning in that argument, then these guys look more douchebaggy than they did before. If they just got to say their stuff and no one challenged them, then people might look at that and go, "Oh, that's pretty reasonable," and might believe that. But if they say their stuff and then someone goes, "Here's why you're completely wrong," then they're made to look like they have infantile rationale, which I do. So let me know what you think. And again, apologies, that was a really long one, but this is a massive, massive topic, and I think worthy of dedicating this much time to. Thank you all for your support. Please like, subscribe, and share. Amplify this message, please. be my be my bots, or something. No, thank you so much to the members who allow me to continue doing this. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.